Hello everyone, and welcome to the Cioffi Brothers podcast. I'm Ken.
I'm Alex.
And today we're going to be jointly reviewing Batman vs. Superman, or Batman v Superman.
Yeah, it's right on the box. It's Batman v Superman.
And this is Dawn of Justice. This is a tough one for us because I think it's one of the few so far that we've been very divisive in our opinions on. We have very differing opinions on the movie in general. And this is it's been a tough one for us to review. We actually tried recording this once already, and it ran really long, and we didn't even get to all the points that we wanted to talk about. So as a result of that, we've taken the time to kind of go through and revamp our process for this specific one. What we're going to do is kind of rapid fire shoot through our pros and cons, and then we'd like to talk about a very specific scene within the movie. And I think this specific scene is representative of a lot of the things that we wanted to talk about in terms of the pros and cons.
It's a very decisive scene that we feel could have been done better.
It would have
made the movie just that much.
Well, I think what it does is this particular scene really exemplifies some of the issues that we may have had, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because I don't want to be too definitive in terms of whether we thought it was good or bad. So let's start with the pros, and we're just going to rapid fire through these. So for one, kind of a classic look for Batman, something we haven't seen before in the movies.
Yeah, the black and gray suit really. It's we've seen all the different Batmans on screen.
Mm-hmm.
And this one definitely stands out from like the Christian Bale Batman.
Yeah,
where he has just the full black and the black insignia.
Well, what's
sort of the nice.
What's interesting is it's a classic look. It's the black and gray. You haven't really seen the black and gray since the Adam West, and even then, it was kind of campy tone to it. So it was interesting seeing a classic look. Huh?
It was like purple.
Well, yeah, that part of it. Next point.
Solid comic book inspired look for Wonder Woman. I loved Wonder Woman in this movie.
Yeah, it was a solid look for her.
Pumped for her solo movie. I think she was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it's very very faithful to the comics. I think they did a nice job of balancing the look of the character of being faithful without necessarily over sexualizing the character.
Yes.
And that's always a plus.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck as Batman. A lot of people on the internet when it was first announced were like, "Oh, I don't know about Batfleck," but he did a decent job.
Which is my favorite name for him, Batfleck, by the way.
Batfleck. It sounds like the insurance. Yeah.
I think he. I was very skeptical at first. He nailed it though.
He did a pretty good job. Yeah.
He nailed it.
Yeah.
Surprised.
Yeah. Certainly better than some of the ones that we've seen in the past. He definitely outdoes Clooney.
Yeah, you think so? I like the bat nipples.
The bat nipples, yeah. So next point. The next point.
Having all three of them on screen for the first time.
Yeah, the Trinity, the DC Trinity
is cool.
It's cool, yeah.
And actually the way they even framed them together with Wonder Woman out front and Batman and Superman on the side,
kind of flanking her.
Yeah, and it was cool. It looked cool.
It did.
And as a hardcore DC fan, and I was giddy.
It was cool. It was definitely
the child in me came out and was like, that's cool.
Yeah. Hints towards Justice League. There were a lot of little hints. I wouldn't even actually say hint. Little hints.
Yeah, they're not little.
They were kind of broad hints. But definitely hinting at Justice League. I mean, this is something that we always like about the Marvel movies is kind of the breadcrumbs that are hinting towards bigger things. And so kind of seeing that in the DC movies and some of the hints about what is to come is always a fun thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's in the title, Dawn of Justice.
Right.
It's happening, and there's a lot of
lead up,
just dropping points left and right about the Justice League, and should be interesting to see where they go with it.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Yep.
This is more yours than it is mine. Jeremy Irons as Alfred. I think he did an all right job.
Yeah.
I think he looks too young to be Alfred, but that's a different story.
That's a fair point. I guess I hadn't even thought of that before. I guess I was just looking at it from the perspective of
He's a good actor.
He's a good. And I thought he was a good Alfred. Really, it was a different inspiration for Alfred. You have oh my gosh, I forget the gentleman's name who played it in the Tim Burton movies. I want to say it's Gao. I think he passed away not that long ago. So you had his version of it, which is very much the kind of the butler with just a quirky sense of humor. You had the Michael Caine version, which was a very involved version, but definitely had that dry wit about him. But this version, I think pulls a little bit more from the what they call the Earth One Batman graphic novels, where they make Alfred a little bit more tough, and they make him a little bit more actively involved. We see Alfred kind of working on the different armors and stuff like that.
Which you imagine he would be if he's Batman's butler. I mean, I'd imagine he'd be a little more involved working on different things.
So it was a different interpretation of Alfred, and I think if he had more time, and he may have more time in the upcoming The Batman when that comes out, I think you're gonna find that it's his own. It's a different version of Alfred, but I still feel it's a very strong version of Alfred.
Yes, definitely.
This one's mine. Yeah, I guess I'll take this one. And I'll say this kind of like with a smirk on my face. Not as bad as I was expecting. This is, like I said in the beginning, this is a very divisive movie. There are people who love it. There are people who hate it. I saw it, quite a bit after the initial release. So, I'd heard a lot of really tough things about it. So going in, I guess you could say I had a low bar. But there was a lot of good points in it. There was a couple of good scenes of Superman that I was like, hey, that's right. That's spot on. That's Superman. Superman, when they had him walking by, he was following Bruce, trying to figure out what Bruce was doing at Lex Luthor's place, and he walks by the kitchen, and they have the TV on, and somebody is in peril. So he has to make the decision: do I continuing to follow Bruce and figure out what he's up to because it looks like he's doing something shady, or do I go save these people? And obviously he's Superman. He went and saved those people.
Saves them, yeah.
So it was some nice moments like that.
Yeah, and that's to those of us who grew up with with the Justice League animated series, the Superman animated series. That's Superman. Mm-hmm. He's
a big blue Boy Scout.
Yeah, and that was it. There are some great scenes in it with Superman, and there's actually some good scenes with Batman.
Yeah, when he goes all Arkham, the Arkham games, Arkham Asylum and Arkham City,
beats everyone,
and he goes nuts. Yeah, so there's definitely some good Batman moments and some good Wonder Woman moments too.
All those Wonder Woman scenes were amazing in my opinion. For some reason, and I don't know what it is.
I think you're just a fan of Gal Gadot.
I am, and she looks great as Wonder Woman, but she really hit it out of the park.
She did. She definitely had that era of someone not of.
She was. You know what it was? She reminded me once again of the animated series where she was tough. She was strong.
She's also regal. She also has that regal quality to her. From American speaking, or not American speaking, but from an American English speaking, her keeping her accent, I think also gives her that air of being not from here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that doesn't carry across as you get into her native speaking areas and stuff, but either way, so not it wasn't as bad as I was expecting it to be. So that's kind of a cheeky pro.
Yeah.
Next one, this was definitely Alex's.
Definitely the Hans Zimmer soundtrack.
Yes.
He knocked it out of the park again. We have here the Man of Steel soundtrack, which
we'll get into why we have that here a little bit later.
Yeah, which if you if you have the time, pick it up because it is absolutely phenomenal. And he does it again. Wonder Woman's theme again, amazing, blows it out of the park. He uses some tracks from the Man of Steel in the Superman scenes, and it just fit together so well. And he does an amazing job scoring these movies.
Well, I definitely very much liked. The riff that they had whenever Wonder Woman came on screen.
Yeah.
That was a very strong riff. You hear it and you immediately think of her. It's got that kind of almost, I don't want to say tribal necessarily.
It feels Amazonian.
It does. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It really is the best way to put it. So very very strong soundtrack.
Yes.
Yeah. And good character interaction. That's our last pro. Is good character interaction. You had some fun moments between Bruce and Diana, and later on you get some interesting play back and forth between Batman and Superman. So
even Lois and Clark.
Clark and Alfred and Bruce. So strong character interactions that feel right for the characters and work really well for the characters. All right, so here's where we're going to kind of really rapid fire through things, because some of these things that we're talking about, we're going to...
They've also been
we're going to talk
on.
about a lot more when we get into our specific scene.
Yes,
yeah.
And they've been touched on and harped on so many different reviews.
Yeah. So first one, the story seemed out of focus to me. This one's really mine. There was a lot of things that I felt personally were almost working, and then if they had just tweaked things just slightly, and that's what I equate this to, is it's like you're watching a movie that seems just slightly out of focus, and if they could just turn the lens just a little bit, you feel like everything could, or at least I felt, like everything could fall into place. There were some plot details that weren't quite clear, some character, which actually, I'm sorry, I'm getting into the next con. Some of the character motivations were kind of confusing and not exactly clear. It just was not in focus to me. I felt it could have been stronger in that sense.
Yeah, and that is our next con, the character motivations. Mm-hmm. But even after that, this movie was long.
It was very long, and I think
extended edition is even longer.
Yeah, and I think what the problem was with that is not even necessarily so much that it was a long movie. The problem was it was a long movie with not a lot happening. We were about halfway through the movie at one point, and I turned to Alex and I said, like, all that has happened here is that we've seen Superman, we've seen Batman. It's like there's no idea where we were going with this movie. So it was a long movie. And again, kind of going back to that story not being in focus piece, is that there was a long movie but not a lot happening. So it seemed, unnecessary at times.
I mean, the first hour of the movie, you have Batman origin again, which 700 times.
Which we might get into that actually later on.
Okay, and then you have Man of Steel recap.
Right, parts of Man of Steel being recapped, yep.
And then, you have the introduction of Lex Luthor, and it's just like nothing really happened.
Right.
It's just like, all right, we get the point. Like, we know these characters.
Slightly out of focus. If they could just tweak things ever so slightly. But anyway, moving on to our next one. So we talked earlier about the build up to the Justice League, which we had as a pro, which it is a pro, and I say that because if you think about 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago, before Marvel really kicked off, before
you saw Iron Man,
before you saw Iron Man, before you saw some of the X-Men movies and stuff coming out, and the superhero craze really kicked off. You would be so excited for this movie. But now, seeing the way things have been done, the way that Marvel has kind of, and I hate to keep comparing back to Marvel, but a lot of the cameos, especially early on, maybe not as much anymore, they might have slacked a little bit, but earlier on the cameos were very organic, and these cameos were not organic, they were crammed in. The crammed in cameos is the con here, is that it was so blatantly pushing Justice League and cramming these cameos down your throat that I wasn't excited for them. I felt like they were forced on me, and it's like, and it was too much too soon for me.
Yes, definitely.
Speaking of too much too soon, I'm sorry because it's a nice segue. Doomsday and the Death of Superman.
Doomsday.
And the issue.
Spoiler alert. First of all, if you haven't seen it.
Well, yeah, I guess a little late there now. But it was not. The Death of Superman was not earned. We just met Superman in Man of Steel. We just met him. We barely had a chance to get to know him as Superman. You figure he didn't show up as Superman until the tail end of this movie, and he's only been Superman in a chunk of this movie, and for most of that time, people didn't even really seem to like him all that much.
Yeah.
So, Death of Superman, too soon, not earned. That's really that one.
Yeah. Then
this one's yours. Yeah, I gotta give you this one because this was clever.
They Zuckerberg Luthor.
Yeah, they basically just made they made Luthor crazy, but not in the way that Luthor should be crazy. They made him awkward, and they made him because they cast Jesse Eisenberg.
Yes.
And he very much came across as evil Mark Zuckerberg.
He was like more Joker than he was Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
And that's not Lex Luthor.
To
Lex
me,
Luthor is smart and he's cunning.
He is. Yeah. Even if you go back to
businessman.
Yeah, even if you go back to the pre-crisis pre-80s version of Lex Luthor, where he was more of a mad scientist than say an 80s business tycoon, which is the way they revamped him post-crisis on Infinite Earths.
The way he's been for the past,
way he's been for
30 years since Crisis.
Since then, and it just doesn't. It didn't work. He just comes across as a bit manic and not really very threatening.
Yeah.
So, continuing cons, we talked about this really already, that everything was rushed, having everyone be super friends, the birth of the Justice League, death of Superman.
Yep.
This one, I'll give this one to you, because this is you.
And I mentioned it before, but just a rehashing of just the Dark Knight. Like,
I thought you were going too much Batman. Yeah, rehashing the Dark
sorry.
Knight. Yeah.
I guess it kind of goes together.
Yeah.
Like, we have, again, an origin for Batman.
More Batman.
There's
too much
Batman.
Yeah.
I don't.
It seems like you can't get by without having Batman in something.
You can't get in any of these DC properties or anything without having Batman, and that's really sad because a lot of these characters can stand on their own.
Strong characters, and they can stand on their own.
Superman being one of them. I can't wait for the Wonder Woman movie because I think it looks amazing.
Yeah.
I think they did a great job with her character. You see, I'm really looking forward to like the Shazam movie, all these movies where these characters are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and look at TV. You have you have the Flash, you have Arrow. Both those shows are running really strong to the point where they've got spin-offs like you have Supergirl and you have Legends of Tomorrow, which are decent in their own right. But the point of the matter is that there are other characters within the DC pantheon that can be focused on.
That are good characters.
That are good, strong characters.
You don't need Batman back.
You don't always need Batman. So that does bring us into our next point, and I think this is mine, and that's the only reason why I interrupted you earlier is because I do want to take this one, is the rehashing of The Dark Knight Returns again. So if you read The Dark Knight Returns, the comic book by Frank Miller, and you look at The Dark Knight Rises, there's a lot of elements in The Dark Knight Rises, the Christopher Nolan the last Christopher Nolan Batman. A lot of elements in there that pull from The Dark Knight Rises. Then shortly after that, you had the animated adaptation of The Dark Knight from The Dark Knight Returns, Part 1 and 2 animated versions. And it's just, how many times do we need to rehash the story? It's a good story. It's a great story. It was innovative for its time, but let's do something new. Let's pull from other things. Let's pull from things that aren't The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, if we're talking about Batman stuff, there's a ton of Batman stuff to pull from. If we're talking about Superman stuff, again, tons of Superman stuff to pull from. I don't think, it just wasn't needed.
Stuff, yeah.
There was a ton of strong stuff. I mean, you got Superman Birthright, which
I was just going to say Birthright, which is really very good.
Amazing graphic novel.
Yep. If you wanted to go something different, you could go to Superman Earth 1. You have Superman Secret Origins that Jeff Johns did not that long ago. That kind of plays off of. There's some elements in there that are very reminiscent of the Richard Donner Superman.
The new Superman American Alien, which was very good. Haven't read it personally yet. Working on it. But I hear great things.
Yeah, I mean, we could go through we could go through and list every excellent Superman comic book. So
why this? Why? I feel like they could have.
There are other source materials that they could be pulling from other than Dark Knight Returns, and we've seen it done. We've seen it. I mean, this is the fourth time if you count Dark Knight Rises and the animated Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2. This is the fourth time we're hashing this content up and serving it up to the user. I mean, there are parts in here that are hashed up pieces from that novel. There are parts in Dark Knight Rises that are hashed up pieces, and the Dark Knight Returns is a straight up adaptation. So let's move on.
Yes.
And in that vein, let's move on.
Not enough Wonder Woman. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm looking forward to the Wonder Woman. Something about it. Something about the new movie. Something about her. Something about her on-screen adaptation. She's not given enough justice as of late. Justice. But I really.
Her direct-to-video animated was very. Very
it was great. And it kind of flew under the radar as one of their DC movies. And that was a long time ago, though.
It was a long time ago. What's her name? Kerry Russell did the voice of Wonder Woman on that one, I think.
And I just feel like she's just, once again, a missed opportunity for them to really, I don't want to say cash in, but to have a strong
representation of a female superhero on screen.
Not even a strong representation of a female character, just a strong character. She's just a good character.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's a strong character, and she's got great origin stories. She's got great stories.
Well, I think in terms of, if you're talking about cashing, if you really want to make that argument, which I think an argument can be made for that, is that, right now there is a lot of talk about making sure that those representations are there, and political correctness and all that. And I don't necessarily buy into that, entirely. But the bottom line is, you do have a strong female character here. Yep. You have a character that has been known for being a strong female character throughout a good chunk of her existence, and it's a shame that they are not utilizing that more.
Yes.
So now we're gonna shift gears a little bit, and this is where we're really gonna switch things up. So we really want to talk about one scene from within this movie, and that is kind of one of the penultimate scenes of the movie where Batman and Superman are fighting. It's the namesake of the movie. Apparently, we had to have them fight at some point because that's just the way we are now. Ever since The Dark Knight Returns, they used to be friends, but now since The Dark Knight Returns.
Have them fight at least.
They have to fight They have to fight before they become friends. Yeah. And the problem is with that scene is that it very quickly shifts from Batman wanting to kill Superman to them being super best friends, and the transition doesn't work. And actually, before we get into it too much, I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually show the viewers our two clips. So what we have actually is the original clip that we're going to show you guys. So the original scene as it is represented in the movie. Then what we have is a version that I've taken some time, and Alex has given me a little bit of input on, to put together to kind of recut that scene and kind of streamline it a little bit so that I think afterwards you'll understand kind of where I'm coming from and why I made some of the changes I did. So let's show that to you guys right now, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the specifics. Okay, so there you have it. So we have the original scene as it was portrayed in the movie, and then we have our version of the scene. So let me walk you through why I think some parts of our scene were necessary. I won't even say that it was better because I'm a hack, but I'll tell you why I think certain parts of the scene were necessary. In the original film, the issue that I had is that the scene became about the fact that their mothers had the same name. The fact that both mothers' names were Martha. And that's what came across on screen. That was not the goal of that scene. The goal of that scene was to make Batman understand that Superman was a man. He may have been from another planet, but he was still just a man. And like him, had a mother, had a life beyond being Superman. It humanized him. It humanized Superman and made him realize that he might not be an enemy and maybe that Batman was taking it too far. So that's why I think certain elements of the scene that I put together work.
Well, definitely having the flashback sequence appear after the main, Martha scene where he talks to, where Lois steps in and says it's his mother's name. Having the flashback scenes, it worked better there than they do in the original scene where it takes place beforehand. It just, and a little bit of music does add to the overall.
And let me explain that. So you have, and I'm invested in this because I spent a bit of time putting this together. So there's a lot of reasons why I did things very specifically the way that I did them. So for one, you have the scene of Bruce and Clark meeting. When Lois is coming in, she calls in Clark. I like to assume that Batman's a smart enough guy that he's figured out that he's Clark Kent.
Yeah.
If not beforehand, then definitely at that point. So it shows that Clark Kent is beyond Superman. He's Clark Kent. He's a man. I'm sorry, humanizing him. Then you have interspersed the shots of Bruce and his parents dying, which is the glue that ties these two things together. It is important to have those things there because you're showing that there was a traumatic event in his life, and this is how that these two men are connected. They're both human. And what's very important about that scene is, we shift into the audio of Jeremy Irons as Alfred saying that key piece of line, which was very prominent in a lot of the trailers.
Yes.
And I thought it was a shame that they didn't bring it back. And that's what I mean by things being out of focus. So by bringing some of these elements back into this scene, we're bringing this movie back into focus. We're bringing things back into talking about, or focusing on the motivations of these characters, why they're doing what they're doing, and showing why what Batman has been doing is wrong. So he's saying, it's a fever. It turns good men cruel. And right as we're saying he turns good men cruel, we're showing the scene where there's the emblem on the guy's chest from having the bat symbol being branded into him, and that's showing the cruelty, and that's showing that Batman has maybe gone too far. Maybe he's been blinded in his path, that he's not seeing things that are very clearly right in front of him. And then we come back to the part where his father's dying and he calls out Bruce's mother's name, Martha. And then we're coming back.
Connects
we're coming
the two
back.
and it comes
That's
back,
when we're coming
yes.
back, and we're saying, yes, these people both have moms named Martha, but it's not about that. It's about the fact that they're both men. They both have mothers. They both cared about people the way men care about people, or the way human beings care about other people. And that's what is key there. And that's when Batman backs off. And that's why he says, oh my, what have I done? And that's when he throws away the scepter. And what's important throughout that whole scene is having this awesome piece of the Hans Zimmer score, where you have that Superman theme that he's composed throughout that entire piece, because it's showing the rise of the realization of Superman as a hero in Batman's eyes, or maybe at least the realization of him as a human being, but then also the resurgence of Batman as a hero, no longer being a villain in this movie and being an ally and being a hero alongside of Superman. And that's why I think all those elements are really necessary there, because it shifts the focus from it being about the fact that, hey, we got the same moms, let's totally be friends, to Batman realizing, oh my goodness, this is a man, I'm not a killer. Like, the man who killed my parents is a killer. I'm not like that. Oh my
That's
God,
the whole
what
reason
have I
I got
been doing?
into crime fighting is
Exactly.
to not be like that.
I've been a
turning into
hypocrite.
that.
I've been a hypocrite. What am I turning into? Exactly.
So it definitely takes the scene and gives it the right tonal shift and
Yes.
the right path.
And then it makes everything that happens after that makes so much more sense. Now you understand why Batman's 100% on Superman's side and willing to be so invested in the things that he's told him, who just moments before was ready to end his life.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, if I had the time
And the
and
whole movie
inclination,
going up to that point, he's ready
Yes.
to kill Superman.
Exactly.
So it gives him it better exemplifies everything that.
Yeah, and I think that is essentially what's wrong with the whole movie, and that's kind of what I was referring to earlier on in our podcast. Is that's what's really wrong with the whole movie, is that there are things that are so close, but just don't quite get there. If I I said, if I had the inclination and the time and was not afraid of being sued, I'd love to rehash the whole movie and see if I can. I mean, I'm not that arrogant to think that I could actually probably even do a halfway decent job, but just to have the experience to try would be fun.
Yeah.
So final grades. Let's talk about final grades. This is where you and I differ quite a bit, and
I wouldn't say quite a bit, but we do differ.
we do differ. Yeah. So overall, I mean, even there are a lot of good things happening. I'll go first. There are a lot of good things happening in this movie, but there were also a lot of things that were frustrating to me as a viewer, that I didn't feel worked as well as they could have. So. And I will preface this by saying, it's very possible that, in the next Superman film or in the next Justice League film, they could do something that makes all these things tie together for me, and I could retroactively change my grade.
We'll see.
We will see. But as of right now, I hate to say I have to give this a D+. And I do say that, being a spoiled comic book nerd, because we've been very spoiled by having a lot of really good movies, and if this movie, like I said, if this movie came out 10 years ago, we would have lost our minds. We would have absolutely lost our minds. We probably would have said this is the greatest superhero movie ever. But the reality of the situation is that the bar is a bit higher than it once was, and they need to step up their game. So that's my grade. Alex, I'll let you go on to your side of things.
I enjoyed this movie for what it was. Mm-hmm. I really did. There was a lot of moments that worked for me. A lot of stuff where I was like, yeah, cool. Superman and Batman on screen. And, of course, Wonder Woman, right. She brought the whole thing up for me. But that being said, that happened in the last, 15, 20 minutes of the movie. The rest of the movie was a lot of filler and a lot of junk. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed it a little more than you, so I'm gonna give it a C+. Being a comic book nerd, there was still something enjoyable about watching some of your favorite heroes. Superman being one of my favorites.
Sure.
On screen, and just being there and fighting and just being on the big screen.
I will say this. If this movie had come after another Superman film,
yes,
we might be having a different conversation here.
We'd probably be having a totally different conversation. There should have been a Man of Steel 2, and
before
then this.
Batman v Superman.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's a argument for another day.
Sure. So I think that about wraps it up for our show today. As always, please feel free to subscribe, comment below, and we hope you enjoyed the show.